My daughter's lips parted and the room seemed to hold its breath. The officiant smiled at her, expecting a traditional response. The guests leaned forward, ready for joy. Her groom, Daniel, squeezed her hands gently, his eyes warm, rehearsed, perfect. But she didn't look at him. She looked at me. Just for a second, and in that second I saw everything she had hidden for years: fear, fury, exhaustion, and a quiet, terrifying resolve. Then she turned back to the altar. "Before I answer," she said softly, "there's something I need to say." A ripple passed through the room. Nervous laughter followed. People assumed it was a sweet speech, a surprise. Daniel smiled, indulgent, confident. He had no idea. "I've been told my whole life that love means patience," she continued. "That it means forgiveness. That it means silence when speaking would make others uncomfortable." Her voice was steady, too steady. My stomach tightened. "I was told that if someone hurts you but apologizes, you should understand. If they lie but say it's for your good, you should believe them." Daniel's smile flickered, just for a moment. Then it returned. "But I learned something very different," she said. "I learned that love should never make you feel small." The room grew quiet, painfully quiet. She released one of his hands, and then the other. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "What is she doing?" Someone whispered behind me. Daniel chuckled lightly, trying to save the moment. "Babe, you're scaring everyone." She didn't react. "For 3 years," she said, "I have lived with a secret." My chest burned. 3 years. She had been 22, barely an adult. I didn't tell my friends. I didn't tell my family. I didn't even tell myself the truth. She reached into her bouquet, pulled out a folded paper. My heart stopped. Another note. She looked directly at Daniel now, and her voice changed, not louder, sharper. "Because the man I loved taught me that speaking would cost me everything." Daniel laughed again, too loud this time. "Okay, this is enough." She raised her hand, and he stopped. Not because he respected her, but because for the first time he was afraid. "You told me no one would believe me," she said. "You said I was dramatic, emotional, weak." My fists clenched. I felt something ancient and violent rise inside my chest. "You said if I ever told the truth, you would ruin me." The murmurs turned into shock. People shifted in their seats. Phones lifted higher. "You told me my own father would choose you over me." That line hit me like a blade, my vision blurred. "You were wrong," she said, then she turned toward the crowd. "And today I'm done being silent." Daniel finally lost control. "Stop," he snapped. "You're embarrassing yourself." She smiled. This time it wasn't calm, it was lethal. "No," she said, "I'm exposing you." The word echoed, exposing. My hands trembled. My daughter reached into the bouquet again and pulled out something else. A small black flash drive. My blood went cold. "Everything you did," she said, holding it up, "is here." Silence collapsed over the room. Daniel's face drained of color. And in that moment I realized this wasn't emotional, this was evidence. For a moment no one moved. Not a cough, not a whisper, not even a shuffle of shoes. The flash drive glinted under the chandelier light, small, ordinary, harmless looking. Yet it felt heavier than any weapon I had ever seen. Daniel's mouth opened, closed. Then he laughed. Not a warm laugh, not even a nervous one. A sharp, brittle sound like glass cracking. "This is insane," he said. "You're ruining your own wedding." My daughter didn't blink. "No," she replied quietly. "I'm saving my life." That line cut through the room like a blade. People shifted. Murmurs rose. I heard someone whisper my name, but I couldn't move, I couldn't breathe. My entire body was locked on her. On the daughter I thought I knew, on the pain I had never seen. "You don't have to do this," Daniel said, stepping closer. His voice dropped into something softer, more intimate, the tone I had once trusted. "We can talk about this later." Later, that word made my blood boil. Later meant silence. Later meant control. Later meant she would never be heard. She stepped back, not in fear, in refusal. "You don't get later anymore," she said. The officiant tried to intervene, hands raised. "Maybe we should take a break." "No," she said, firm, unmovable. She turned to the crowd. Her hands were shaking now, but she didn't hide it. She let them see. 3 years ago, she said, I trusted him. I felt my throat tighten. He was charming, attentive, gentle. Daniel stared at her, eyes wide, calculating. And slowly, she continued, he became someone else. She looked down at the floor, then back up, stronger. He told me who I was allowed to talk to, what I was allowed to wear, what I was allowed to think. A woman near the front gasped. He told me jealousy meant love. My nails dug into my palms. He told me pain meant I cared. My heart broke with every word. And when I finally said no, she whispered, he made sure I would never forget it. Daniel stepped forward again. You're twisting things, she held up the flash drive. Audio, she said. Messages, videos, screenshots. The room swayed. Your voice, your words, your threats. Threats. That word thundered in my skull. You said if I ever left, you'd make sure no one believed me. Her eyes finally met mine again, and this time they were pleading, not for help, for trust. Dad, she said, her voice cracking for the first time, I need you to hear this. My knees weakened. I need you to know I didn't imagine it. My chest burned. I didn't deserve it. I took a step forward, then another. Daniel turned to me, panic flashing behind his eyes. Sir, she's unstable, I raised my hand, and he stopped, not because I asked, but because something in my face terrified him. Play it, my daughter said. Someone connected the flash drive to the sound system. The screen flickered to life. And then his voice filled the room. Cold, cruel, unmistakable. If you tell anyone, Daniel's recorded voice said, I will destroy you. My blood turned to ice. The room didn't erupt. It didn't scream. It didn't collapse into chaos. It froze. Daniel's recorded voice echoed again, clearer this time, sharper, impossible to misinterpret. You think anyone will believe you? The voice said. I'll make sure they don't. A collective inhale rippled through the hall. Someone dropped a glass. It shattered, the sound too loud, too sudden. Daniel lunged for the sound system. Too late. Another clip began. Cry all you want, his voice sneered. It won't change anything. My daughter stood perfectly still. She didn't flinch. She didn't blink. She had already lived through this. This was nothing compared to that. I felt something inside me crack. Not anger, something deeper. Guilt. I remembered the nights she had said she was tired. The times she canceled plans. The way she stopped hugging me the same way. I had asked if she was okay. She had said yes, and I had believed her. Daniel grabbed her wrist. Hard, too hard. Turn it off, he hissed. Now, the entire room gasped. I moved before I thought, before I felt, before I planned. I was suddenly in front of him, between them. My hand closed around his arm. I didn't squeeze. I didn't shout. I just looked at him. And for the first time, he looked afraid. Let go, I said, quiet, deadly. He hesitated, then released her. My daughter didn't thank me. She didn't look at me. She walked to the microphone. Her hands were trembling now, but she lifted it anyway. I stayed, she said, her voice cracking, because I thought surviving quietly was better than being destroyed loudly. Her eyes scanned the room. I was wrong. The next clip played. You're nothing without me, Daniel's voice said. No one will ever love you like I do. A woman sobbed. Somewhere behind me, I heard a man whisper, oh my God. Daniel staggered backward, his face pale, his jaw trembling. This isn't real, he muttered. This is edited. Another clip. If you leave me, I swear I'll make sure you regret it. My knees nearly buckled. My daughter looked straight at him. You don't get to rewrite this, she said. She turned to the crowd. I am not broken, she said. I was silenced. Her voice grew stronger. And today I choose to be heard. Someone stood, then another, and another, not cheering, not clapping, standing in witness. Daniel opened his mouth to speak. No sound came out, because the room no longer belonged to him. My daughter walked toward me, slowly, carefully. As if she were crossing a fragile bridge, she stopped in front of me. For the first time since she was a child, she looked small. Do you believe me? She whispered. My heart broke, completely. I pulled her into my arms in front of everyone. And I said yes. One word, but it carried everything I had failed to give her before: trust, protection, unconditional love. Daniel collapsed into a chair, and I saw it then: not defeat, exposure. And this was only the beginning. The room felt different now, not lighter, heavier. As if the truth had weight and it had settled into every corner, pressing down on every chest, every conscience. No one clapped. No one moved. They simply stared. At my daughter, at me, at Daniel, slumped, exposed, hollowed out. The officiant stepped back, uncertain, his script trembling in his hands. This was not a ceremony anymore. This was a reckoning. My daughter remained in my arms for a moment longer than necessary. She needed it. So did I. When she finally pulled away, her face was composed again, but I could see the cracks beneath the calm. Years of terror do not disappear in one brave moment. They wait, they echo. I didn't plan this to humiliate you, she said, turning toward Daniel. Her voice was steady but tired. I planned this so you could never hurt me again. Daniel lifted his head slowly. His eyes were glassy, not with remorse, with calculation. You destroyed everything, he said quietly. She shook her head. No, you did. That was when the murmurs began, not shock anymore, judgment, anger, disgust. I heard someone say, how could he? Another voice whispered, she's so brave. Daniel stood, slowly, unsteadily. For a moment I thought he might run. Instead he laughed, low, broken. You think this makes you strong, he said. You think anyone will forget this? My daughter didn't respond. She didn't need to, because I did. They won't forget, I said, stepping forward. But not for the reason you think. Daniel looked at me, truly looked, and for the first time he saw not a polite future father-in-law, but a man who had failed his child and would never fail her again. You don't get to speak anymore, I said. My voice was calm, but it wasn't gentle. He opened his mouth. I didn't let him finish. You don't get to explain, you don't get to justify, and you don't get to rewrite her pain into your comfort. The room stayed silent, not tense, respectful. Daniel's shoulders slumped, not in defeat, in recognition. He had lost control, the thing he cherished most. My daughter stepped forward again. She reached into her bouquet one last time, pulled out a folded piece of paper. This one was different. This, she said, holding it up, is the letter I was supposed to read today. Her voice trembled, not from fear, from grief. She unfolded it, looked at it, then tore it in half. Gasps rippled. She dropped the pieces at Daniel's feet. That life is dead, she said. The one where I was quiet, the one where I was afraid. She turned to the crowd. I don't need a wedding today, she said. I needed the truth. Her eyes met mine, and in that look I saw something terrifying and beautiful: freedom. But freedom has a cost, and I knew this wasn't the end. This was the moment the world would begin to answer her back. The truth didn't end when the doors of the hall closed behind us. It followed us, into phones, into messages, into whispers that multiplied faster than we could breathe. By the time we reached the car, my phone was already vibrating in my pocket, once, twice, then relentlessly. My daughter sat beside me, staring straight ahead, her hands folded in her lap as if she were afraid to look at anything that might remind her of what she had just done, what she had just survived. Do you want to go home? I asked softly. She shook her head. If I go home, she said, I'll fall apart. I nodded, so we drove, no destination, just movement, because sometimes staying still is more dangerous than moving. Her phone lit up, then mine, then both of them again. They're posting about it, she whispered. I didn't ask who. I already knew. Friends, guests, people who had been strangers 10 minutes earlier. Everyone who had witnessed it, everyone who had filmed it. I pulled over. She finally looked at her screen, and her face changed. Not fear, not relief, something else. They don't believe me, she said. My stomach dropped. What? She turned the screen toward me. Comments. Hundreds of them, thousands. Some were kind, some were supportive, but others, she's lying. She wanted attention. She planned this, poor guy. She ruined his life. I felt something hot rise behind my eyes. Not tears, rage. They don't know anything, I said. She laughed, once, dry. That's what he said too. The words hung between us like smoke. I reached for her hand, she let me, barely. Her phone buzzed again. This time she answered it, not with her voice, with a look. "It's him," she said. "Daniel." I shook my head. She declined the call. It rang again. Then a message appeared. She read it silently, then handed me the phone. My blood went cold. "You think you won?" The message read. "You've just started a war." I stared at it, then at her. She wasn't crying, she wasn't shaking, she was empty. "He said no one would believe me," she whispered. And now I took the phone from her. Typed with shaking hands, blocked his number. Then every number associated with him. But I knew blocking a man like him doesn't stop him, it provokes him. "I don't regret it," she said. I believed her. But regret and consequence are not the same thing. We drove again. And when we reached home, she didn't go inside. She sat in the car, staring. "Dad," she said, "what if this destroys me?" I turned to her fully, no half answers, no comfort lies. "Then we rebuild," I said, "brick by brick." She swallowed. "What if he comes after me?" I didn't hesitate. "Then he comes through me." She looked at me then, really looked, and something in her expression shifted. Not hope, trust. Inside, my phone buzzed again. A new message from an unknown number. I opened it. And my breath left my body. "She isn't the only one," the message read. "He did it to me too." The message glowed on my screen like a wound that refused to close. "She isn't the only one. He did it to me too." I didn't show it to her right away. I didn't know how, because once I did, there would be no turning back. No pretending this was contained. No illusion that this was just a personal storm. My daughter stared out the window, her reflection faintly visible in the glass. She looked older than she had that morning. Not in years, in weight, in knowing, in loss. "Dad," she said quietly, "you're holding your phone like it's about to explode." I swallowed. Then I handed it to her. She read the message once, then again. Then a third time. Her lips parted. No sound came out. And then her shoulders began to shake, not loudly, not dramatically, silently, like something breaking in slow motion. "I wasn't crazy," she whispered. My chest collapsed inward. "No," I said, "you were." She covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes filled, not with relief, with grief. "That means," I nodded, "yes." She looked at me terrified. "How many?" I didn't answer because I didn't know, and that was worse. Another message arrived, then another. Different numbers, same story. Different words, same pain. He told me no one would believe me. He said it was my fault. I stayed quiet because I was ashamed. Each message felt like a blade, not because they were surprising, but because they were familiar. My daughter curled inward, hugging herself. "He used me," she whispered, "to practice." That sentence destroyed me. I pulled her into my arms again. She didn't resist this time. She clung, like a child, like someone who had been pretending to be strong for too long. "We have to tell someone," I said. She pulled back slowly. Fear filled her eyes. "No," she said. "No, I can't go through this again." I didn't argue, I didn't push, because I knew survival teaches you to choose silence over pain, even when silence is poison. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a video. She didn't open it. I did. "Daniel." His face filled the screen, calm, composed, too composed. "You think you're safe?" he said into the camera. "You've made a lot of noise. People like you don't survive noise." My blood went cold. "You humiliated me," he continued. "Now I get to tell my side." The video ended. My daughter stared at the black screen, her breathing quickened. "He's going to turn this around," she whispered. "He always does." I believed her, because men like him don't lose, they adapt. I took her phone, deleted the video, blocked the number, but we both knew you can't delete a man who thrives on control. You can only expose him or let him consume you. "We're not alone anymore," I said. She shook her head. "Being believed is louder than being alone," she whispered. I looked at her, really looked. And I realized the bravest thing she had ever done wasn't standing at that altar. It was surviving long enough to speak. And now the world was about to answer, violently, publicly, and without mercy. The next morning, the world began to stir. My daughter's story wasn't just ours anymore. It had slipped past whispers, past cautious friends, past the walls that tried to contain it. It was everywhere. Screens, social media feeds, texts, emails. The world had its eyes on Daniel. And Daniel wasn't ready. He always thought he controlled the narrative. He hadn't counted on her, or me, or the proof she had gathered. The videos, the screenshots, the timelines meticulously kept for years, they were damning. And now they were undeniable. The first call came to our door before the sun had fully risen. A reporter, flashing badge, polite smile. "We need to speak with the daughter," he said. She shook her head, eyes wide, trembling. "Not yet," I whispered, but we both knew delay was dangerous. Daniel had already felt the shift. The first article hit the feeds mid-morning. The headline, "The Wedding That Exposed a Monster." Comments poured in. Some supportive, some cruel, some disbelieving, but the truth couldn't be argued. Daniel posted a statement. Calm, collected, calculated. "False accusations," he said. "Fabricated stories. Lies to destroy reputations." We had expected this. We had anticipated it, but it still stung. Because the world doesn't move instantly. It hesitates, it questions, it judges. Meanwhile, the women came forward, one by one, like drops of rain breaking a drought. Each story echoed my daughter's. Each story filled in the gaps. Each story added weight to the impossible truth. And Daniel's empire began to crack. His allies whispered, hesitated. People who had once bowed to him now looked away. The walls he built around himself were crumbling. And he realized too late that the consequences of his actions were real. The law stepped in. Investigators, cameras, the careful collection of evidence. He had thought his control absolute. He had thought no one could touch him, but control is an illusion. And fear, no matter how deep, eventually surfaces. My daughter watched, numb, as her life shifted. The man who had haunted her every memory, every shadow, every dream was now trembling. Not because of guilt, not because of shame, because the world had turned its gaze on him and it did not blink. For the first time she could breathe. She smiled quietly, a smile heavy with relief, heavy with sorrow, heavy with the weight of years lost. She had survived, and she had fought. And finally, the monsters were the ones looking over their shoulder. The courtroom doors opened. Daniel walked in, immaculate, rehearsed. The cameras flashed. The reporters whispered. The truth waited in the evidence. Every note, every video, every testimony, a map of his destruction. The trial began, and the world watched. My daughter sat beside me, hands clenched around mine. She was trembling, yes, but it wasn't fear. It was anticipation. The reckoning she had feared for so long was here. And for the first time she felt the power of her own voice. The judge called the first witness. The room was silent except for the soft intake of breath, and then the words began. And Daniel's world began to unravel, piece by piece, lie by lie. Fear finally mirrored the one he had forced onto others. And my daughter, she sat tall, eyes clear, heart steady. The note she had handed me at the wedding was no longer just a secret. It was a weapon, it was truth, it was freedom. And now, finally, she was heard. The courtroom was thick with tension. Every eye in the room was fixed on Daniel. He tried to maintain his composure, polished suit, rehearsed gestures, the calm of a man who believed he was untouchable. But the cracks were there, in the twitch of a hand, in the way his eyes flickered toward the evidence screens, in the almost imperceptible tremor in his jaw. The witnesses took the stand, one after another, their voices steady, their eyes unwavering. Stories he had dismissed, stories he had tried to bury, stories he had laughed off in private, now roared through the courtroom. The first witness, a former employee, spoke of manipulation, threats, and intimidation. The second, a childhood friend of my daughter, revealed years of Daniel's control over her life, his subtle threats, and the constant shadow of fear. Each story chipped away at the persona he had so carefully crafted. My daughter's turn came. She rose, tall and unshakable. Her note, the same one from her wedding day, was read aloud, clear and precise. Every word a dagger, every line a revelation. Daniel's face drained of color as the truth crystallized before him. The judge asked for his statement. He opened his mouth, hesitated, and then stumbled through a few defensive words. But the truth had already set its roots in the minds of those present. The attorneys presented the evidence. Messages, recordings, financial manipulations, the long-hidden documents showing years of deceit. The jury leaned forward. The spectators held their breath. And then came the verdicts, one by one, each charge acknowledged, each lie exposed. Daniel's empire of fear and control collapsed in a matter of hours. The courtroom was silent as the final words were read. He was found guilty on multiple counts: fraud, coercion, emotional abuse, and more. The weight of decades of manipulation crushed him in an instant. My daughter exhaled slowly, her body finally releasing the tension it had carried for so long. She looked at me, eyes glistening, a mixture of sorrow and relief, rage and liberation. "It's over, Dad," she whispered. And it truly was. Daniel was led away, shackled, defeated, stripped of the control he had once wielded so ruthlessly. The media outside clamored for statements, but she remained quiet, letting the evidence speak for itself. The storm had passed, leaving clarity in its wake. People approached us, friends, family, even strangers, offering support, apologies, and acknowledgement of the courage it took to face him. And for the first time in years, she smiled, not the brittle, fearful smile of the past, but a genuine, unbroken smile. She had endured, she had fought, and she had emerged victorious. And I felt a surge of pride so profound it threatened to overwhelm me. The father who had doubted, who had feared, who had almost given in to despair, now stood tall beside his daughter, witnessing justice served. The wedding note, once a simple piece of paper, had become a symbol, a declaration that even in the darkest shadows truth could shine, and vengeance could be measured, just, and inevitable. As we left the courtroom, the sun broke through the clouds, illuminating her face with a warmth that matched the victory in her heart. She was free, we were free, and the reckoning had finally been delivered. No cheers, no celebration, just quiet, heavy, victorious relief. The weight of years lifted, the monsters confronted, the justice undeniable, and the story, though painful, was complete. The house was quiet when we returned. Empty rooms echoed with memories, some sweet, many bitter. My daughter walked through the hallway slowly, touching the walls as if confirming that this life, this reality, was truly hers to reclaim. She paused in her old bedroom, now empty of her childhood things, yet filled with the weight of all that had happened. Her eyes welled up again, not with fear this time, but with the deep, raw emotion of survival. She turned to me, her voice barely above a whisper, yet steady and firm. "I never thought we'd get here, Dad. I never thought I'd feel safe, really safe." I reached for her hand, feeling the tremor that lingered from years of tension. "You fought this," I said. "You fought every step of the way, and you won." The words hung in the air, heavy with truth, heavy with the relief of justice finally served. We sat together in the living room, the silence now a comforting presence rather than a suffocating weight. I thought about Daniel, how he had built walls of lies, manipulation, and fear. How he had underestimated the resilience of my daughter, the love of a family, and the inevitability of truth. Outside, the world went on, oblivious to the quiet battles we had fought within these walls. But inside, everything had changed. The wedding note, the courtroom, the years of betrayal, they had all led to this moment. A moment of calm, a moment of reflection, a moment of freedom. We didn't speak for a long time. Words were unnecessary. The air was thick with the emotions we had carried for too long. Then she smiled again, faint but genuine, and it lit the room with something we hadn't felt in years: hope. It wasn't a loud, triumphant victory. It was quiet, measured, and deeply satisfying, the kind of victory that doesn't need applause to exist. I watched her leave the room, her steps confident, her posture unburdened. And I realized something profound. Revenge, when tempered with justice, doesn't destroy, it restores. It restores dignity, it restores trust, it restores the possibility of a life reclaimed. And in that quiet restoration, in that measured emotional triumph, we found closure. No gloating, no dramatics, just the heavy, profound peace of a long-buried truth finally acknowledged. As night fell, the house seemed to exhale with us, carrying away the shadows of fear, doubt, and manipulation. The story of betrayal, of hate, of manipulation had ended not with chaos but with clarity. And in that clarity we were free, my daughter, myself, and the life that had been stolen from us, piece by piece, now restored. Sometimes justice is quiet, sometimes it is heavy, but when it is right, it is absolute. And that night, as I watched her sleep, I knew we had survived. We had endured. We had overcome. The echoes of the past remained, but they no longer controlled us. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt an unshakable calm settle over us. The darkness had passed, the reckoning was done, and the light, faint but undeniable, finally returned.